Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. When former President Donald Trump launched tariffs, his goal was to protect American industries and jobs. The policy, dubbed America First, targeted economic competitors like China, but also hit allies such as Japan. The idea was to pressure nations into fairer trade practices and strengthen the U.S. manufacturing base. This marked a sharp break from decades of U.S. support for free trade and alliances. By making imports pricier, the administration hoped Americans would buy more domestic goods, boosting local production. Tariffs on steel and aluminum directly challenged Japan, a major exporter of both. But global economics is a web. Actions in one place spark reactions elsewhere. The tariffs didn't just affect company profits, they began to strain diplomatic ties that had been stable for generations. For Japan, the tariffs felt like a betrayal, raising doubts about the reliability of its closest partner. This uncertainty pushed Japanese leaders to seek new partnerships and diversify their global ties. We'll explore how a policy meant to bolster America's strength instead nudged Japan to reconsider its place in the world. We'll look at the rise of the BRICS bloc and Japan's cautious engagement with it. The story of Trump's tariffs and Japan's response is a lesson in how economic moves can reshape global alliances in unexpected ways. And it's a story still unfolding with major implications for the future of American leadership. In 2018, the Trump administration imposed steep tariffs on steel and aluminum, citing national security. While China was the main target, allies like Japan were also hit, causing shock in Tokyo. Japan, a key supplier of high-grade steel for U.S. industries, suddenly faced a 25% price hike on its exports. The tariffs aimed to protect U.S. producers and revive domestic manufacturing jobs. But they also challenged the free trade principles that had long shaped the global economy. For Japan, the move was a major economic blow. Its steel exports to the U.S. became less competitive overnight. Japanese companies like Nippon Steel saw profits threatened, and the government's protests fell on deaf ears in Washington. The policy didn't distinguish between rivals and allies, sending a blunt message: America's domestic agenda came first. This lack of nuance strained diplomatic ties and forced Japan to rethink its reliance on the U.S. The tariffs signaled that even close allies could be collateral damage in America's shifting trade strategy. For Japan, it was a wake-up call, one that pushed policymakers to consider new economic and strategic options. The alliance that had anchored Japan's foreign policy for decades suddenly seemed less certain. The result? Tokyo began quietly preparing for a world where it couldn't depend solely on Washington. The tariffs were more than an economic tool. They were a turning point in U.S.-Japan relations, and they set the stage for Japan's search for new partners. The tariffs' impact was immediate, and not as intended. Some U.S. steelmakers saw short-term gains, but many American industries faced higher costs. Automakers, construction firms, and manufacturers relying on imported materials passed those costs to consumers. Instead of a manufacturing boom, many sectors faced uncertainty and job losses. Business groups warned that global supply chains couldn't be rewired overnight. Many U.S. manufacturers needed specialized steel from Japan, and switching suppliers hurt their competitiveness. In Japan, the pain was just as real. Steel and auto exports to the U.S. dropped, forcing companies to cut back and seek new markets. The uncertainty discouraged Japanese investment in the U.S., fearing more protectionist moves. The tariffs damaged not just economies but also trust between the two allies. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's personal diplomacy with Trump failed to shield Japan, deepening the sense of betrayal. The alliance, once a guarantee of fair treatment, now seemed fragile. This erosion of trust pushed Japan to explore strategic alternatives for the first time in decades. The economic fallout was clear, but the diplomatic consequences would prove even more profound. Japan's search for new partners had begun. To understand Japan's shift, we need to look at BRICS. Originally an investment term for Brazil, Russia, India, and China, BRICS became a real political platform in 2009. South Africa joined in 2010, and together these nations sought a more multipolar world order. BRICS members argued that Western-led institutions like the IMF and World Bank didn't represent emerging economies. They created alternatives, including the New Development Bank, NDB, to fund projects without Western strings attached. By the mid-2020s, BRICS expanded to include Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, dramatically increasing its economic and political weight. The bloc now controls a significant share of global GDP, population, and energy. For resource-dependent Japan, this new BRICS Plus bloc was a powerful economic reality. It was no longer just a loose group of emerging markets, but a formidable force with global influence. Japan had to take notice. With US trade pressure mounting, Japan began quietly exploring new options. This wasn't a break from the US alliance, but a pragmatic adjustment. Japanese diplomats and business leaders increased engagement with BRICS nations, seeking economic diversification. Tokyo started attending BRICS forums and held more bilateral talks with India, Brazil, and South Africa. The focused trade, investment, and tech cooperation. Japan found common ground with the BRICS New Development Bank, partnering on infrastructure projects without formally joining. This allowed Japan to benefit from BRICS growth while maintaining strategic distance. By 2025, Japan had positioned itself as a bridge between the G7 and BRICS, leveraging its reputation for quality and reliability. The approach was incremental, quiet steps, not bold declarations. The tariffs meant to isolate Japan instead made it more globally connected and independent. Japan's cautious dance with BRICS became a key feature of its foreign policy. The results of Japan's pivot showed up in trade data. US tariffs led to a slow decline in America's share of Japanese exports, while trade with BRICS nations, especially India and the Middle East, grew. Japanese automakers increased investments in India and Brazil, diversifying away from US risks. Japan, lacking natural resources, began signing long-term energy contracts with new BRICS members like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Some deals were even settled in non-dollar currencies, aligning with BRICS's goals. In tech, Japan deepened collaboration with India, focusing on digital transformation and joint R&D. These partnerships gave Japan alternatives to the intensifying US-China tech rivalry. The shift was gradual, but deliberate. Japan wasn't abandoning the West but building a more balanced economic portfolio. By 2025, Japan's economy was more resilient and less vulnerable to shocks from any single partner. Strengthening BRICS ties created a safety net. The tariffs meant to pressure Japan instead spurred its evolution into a more agile, independent global player. Japan's network of partners had never been more diverse. For Japan, it's not a choice between the US and BRICS. It's about what each offers. The US remains Japan's top ally, providing a security guarantee through the US-Japan Security Treaty. The American military presence and nuclear umbrella are irreplaceable for Japan's defense. The US is also a vital market and innovation leader. BRICS, on the other hand, offers massive growth potential and access to resources. Its young, growing populations represent the future of global consumer demand. For resource-poor Japan, strong BRICS ties are a strategic necessity. The US relationship is deep but can be unpredictable, as the tariffs showed. BRICS partnerships are more transactional, based on mutual economic interests and non-interference. Japan's strategy: maintain its US alliance while reaping BRICS's economic benefits. It's a complex balancing act, but for now, Japan aims to be indispensable to both sides. Navigating this rivalry is key to Japan's autonomy in a divided world. Japan's pivot could reshape the global landscape. One future, a world split into three spheres: the Western Bloc, a China-Russia-led BRICS, and middle powers like Japan, India, and Brazil acting as swing states. This would reduce automatic US influence, forcing Washington to consult more with allies. Alliances may become more flexible, with countries like Japan aligning with the US on security, but with BRICS on trade and development. This a la carte approach could lead to a more balanced world order, but also more complexity. The risk greater instability as countries navigate between rival blocs. A crisis could force hard choices, raising the stakes for global peace. The future of alliances is uncertain. Japan's response to the tariff shows how a single policy can redraw the geopolitical map. In a connected world, even small shifts can have cascading effects. The story is far from over. The Trump tariffs are a case study in unintended consequences. A policy meant to protect US industry sparked a global chain reaction, straining the US-Japan alliance. Instead of isolating Japan, the tariffs pushed it to seek new partners and greater autonomy. The rise of BRICS gave Japan alternatives, especially as the bloc expanded to include key energy producers. Japan didn't abandon the US, but adapted to a world where economic power is more distributed. The lesson for America: alliances must be nurtured, not taken for granted. Economic policies that hurt allies can drive them elsewhere. To lead globally, the US must offer more benefits than rivals and focus on cooperation, not coercion. Japan's journey is about more than trade. It's about adapting to a changing world order. Even the strongest alliances can shift under economic pressure. In this new era, adaptability and balance are the true measures of national strength.